My name is Sandra Perez, and at 32, I thought I understood family loyalty. Growing up as the eldest of 3 children, I'd always been the responsible one, the sister who remembered birthdays, organized holiday gatherings, and stepped up when our parents needed help. When my younger sister Catherine moved back home after her devastating breakup last spring, I welcomed her with open arms, believing that family meant everything. Our childhood home on Maple Street had always been the gathering place for the Perez family. Mom and Dad bought it when I was 5, and every major milestone happened within those familiar walls. Catherine and I shared the upstairs bedroom for years, whispering secrets late into the night and promising we'd always have each other's backs. Our brother Xavier lived across town with his wife, but he visited regularly, especially after Dad's heart attack 2 years ago. When Catherine's 5-year relationship imploded, she was devastated. Her ex had cheated, emptied their joint savings account, and left her with nothing but debt and heartbreak. Without hesitation, I offered her my spare bedroom. "Family takes care of family," I told her, echoing the words our parents had drilled into us since childhood. She moved in with 2 suitcases and a broken spirit, promising it would only be temporary. At first, everything seemed normal. Catherine helped with groceries, pitched in with household chores, and we fell back into our old rhythm of sister movie nights and shared dinners. She found a new job within a month and seemed to be getting back on her feet. We even started planning a surprise party for Mom's upcoming 65th birthday, dividing responsibilities like we always had. But subtle changes began creeping in. Catherine would disappear for hours without explanation, claiming she was running errands or meeting friends. Her phone calls became secretive, hushed conversations that ended abruptly when I entered the room. When I asked about her plans to find her own place, she'd deflect with jokes or change the subject entirely. The first real warning sign came during Sunday dinner at our parents' house. Dad mentioned needing help with some financial paperwork, and Catherine immediately volunteered to handle it. "Sandra's so busy with work," she said, shooting me a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I have more time to help out." Something in her tone made my stomach twist, but I pushed the feeling aside. She was just trying to be helpful, right? Then came the phone calls from Mom, worried conversations about bills and bank statements that didn't add up. "I'm sure it's nothing," Mom would say, but I could hear the confusion in her voice. "Catherine's been such a help with everything. I just wish I understood these new account statements better." The unease grew stronger when I noticed Catherine's sudden lifestyle changes. Designer clothes appeared in her closet, expensive dinners out became frequent, and she bought a new car, all while claiming she was still struggling financially from her breakup. When I gently asked how she was managing these purchases, she laughed it off. "I'm finally treating myself for once. Don't I deserve some happiness after everything I've been through?" Last week, I found a stack of documents in Catherine's room while looking for a borrowed book. Bank statements, legal papers, and financial forms, all bearing our parents' names. My hands trembled as I realized what I was looking at, and a cold dread settled in my chest. Something was very, very wrong, and I was about to discover just how deep my sister's betrayal ran. Growing up, Catherine and I had been inseparable. As the older sister by 3 years, I'd always felt protective of her, especially after our father's heart attack when she was 16. We'd made a pact that night in the hospital waiting room. We would always take care of each other and our parents, no matter what life threw at us. That promise had shaped our entire adult relationship. When Catherine's marriage fell apart last year, there was never a question about where she'd go. My apartment became our apartment, my support system became hers. We'd sit up late into the night, sharing wine and memories, planning how we'd navigate this new chapter together. "Remember when we used to play house in the basement?" Catherine had said one evening, curled up on my couch with a blanket. "You were always the responsible one, making sure everyone was fed and happy." Some things never change. She'd smiled then, that genuine smile I'd known since childhood, and I'd felt grateful that our bond had remained so strong through everything. Our parents, Robert and Maria Watson, had raised us with old-fashioned values about family loyalty. Sunday dinners were sacred, holidays were elaborate affairs, and we all pitched in when someone needed help. When Dad's construction business slowed down, and Mom's arthritis made her part-time job at the library impossible, Catherine and I had naturally stepped up. We need to make sure they're comfortable, Catherine had said during one of our planning sessions. They sacrificed so much for us growing up. Now it's our turn. We'd committed to sharing the costs of their care, everything from groceries and utilities to medical expenses and home repairs. I handled the regular monthly contributions from my marketing job, while Catherine promised to cover unexpected expenses and provide hands-on help since she had more flexible time. The arrangement had worked beautifully at first. Catherine would spend entire days at their house, helping Mom with cleaning and organizing, driving Dad to doctor's appointments, and handling what she called the boring paperwork stuff that overwhelmed them. She seemed to thrive in the caretaker role, and our parents adored having her so involved in their daily lives. Catherine's been such a blessing, Mom would tell me during our weekly phone calls. She's helping us organize all these confusing financial documents. You know how your father and I are with technology and all these new banking systems. She's setting up online accounts and automatic payments to make everything easier. I'd felt nothing but gratitude for my sister's dedication. Between my demanding job and her flexible schedule, it made perfect sense for her to handle the day-to-day care coordination. She'd send me regular updates about their health, their needs, and any expenses that came up. Everything seemed under control. But as weeks turned into months, small inconsistencies began to surface. Catherine would mention expensive medical bills that I never saw receipts for, or claim that Dad needed costly home modifications that seemed unnecessary when I visited. When I offered to review the expenses or speak directly with their doctors, she'd wave me off. Don't worry about the details, Sandra. I've got everything handled. You're already doing so much by covering the monthly costs. Let me take care of the rest. Her reassurances always came with that same loving smile, the one that had comforted me through childhood scraped knees and teenage heartbreaks. The first crack in my trust came during Mom's birthday party planning. Catherine had volunteered to handle all the arrangements, from booking the restaurant to coordinating with relatives. But when I called the venue to confirm details, they had no record of our reservation. I'm sorry, but we don't have anything under Watson for that date, the hostess had said. Are you sure you have the right restaurant? When I confronted Catherine, she'd laughed it off as a miscommunication. I must have gotten my wires crossed. Don't worry, I'll fix it. But something in her eyes had shifted, just for a moment, a flicker of panic that she quickly covered with her usual charm. Then came the incident with Dad's medication. He'd run out of his heart pills, and when I called to check on the refill, the pharmacy said the prescription had been transferred to a different location across town. Catherine claimed she'd moved it for convenience, but Dad seemed confused about the change. I don't remember asking for that, he'd whispered to me during a quiet moment. Catherine said it was necessary for insurance reasons, but I've been going to Murphy's Pharmacy for 20 years. They know me there. The most troubling moment came when I tried to visit on a Tuesday afternoon and found the house locked up tight. Catherine's car was in the driveway, but no one answered the door. When I called her cell phone, she answered breathlessly, claiming she'd been in the shower. But through the window, I could see her moving around the living room, papers scattered across Dad's desk. Why didn't you answer the door? I'd ask when she finally let me in. I didn't hear you knock. You know how loud the shower gets. But her hair was completely dry, and she seemed nervous, quickly gathering up the documents that had been spread out moments before. That night, I'd called Mom to check in, and her voice carried a worry I'd never heard before. Sandra, honey, I'm probably just being silly, but some of our bank statements look different lately. Catherine says she's helping us switch to better accounts with lower fees, but I don't understand all these new numbers and transfers. What kind of transfers, Mom? Oh, I don't know. Catherine handles all that now. She says it's too complicated for us to worry about, that she's making sure we're getting the best deals. But sometimes I see these large amounts moving around, and I wish I understood it better. My stomach had dropped. Mom, would you like me to come over and look at the statements with you? Catherine says that's not necessary. She doesn't want to burden you with more responsibilities when you're already working so hard. She's very protective of your time, you know. Protective of my time or protective of her access to their finances. The breaking point came last Thursday. I decided to surprise Dad with lunch and found him sitting alone at the kitchen table, staring at a stack of bills with tears in his eyes. This strong man who'd built houses with his bare hands and raised 2 daughters looked utterly defeated. Dad, what's wrong? He'd looked up at me with such confusion and fear that my heart broke. Sandra, I don't understand what's happening. Catherine says we owe money on accounts I don't remember opening. She says there are penalties and fees that need to be paid right away, but when I ask to see the paperwork, she tells me not to worry about it. What kind of accounts? Credit cards, she says, and some kind of investment thing that went bad. She's been taking money from our savings to cover the payments, but now she says the savings account is almost empty. His voice cracked. I don't remember agreeing to any investments. Your mother and I, we've always been careful with money. We don't take risks like that. I'd sat down beside him, my mind racing. Dad, where is Catherine now? She went to the bank to sort things out. She said she'd be back soon, but that was 3 hours ago. He'd grabbed my hand then, his grip desperate. Sandra, I'm scared. I don't understand what's happening to our money. And when I try to ask questions, Catherine gets upset. She says I'm being ungrateful after everything she's doing for us. That's when I knew. The designer clothes, the expensive dinners, the new car, it was all making horrible sense. My sister, the person I trusted with our parents' well-being, had been systematically draining their accounts while positioning herself as their savior. But the worst part wasn't the money. It was what happened when Dad had his panic attack that evening. I'd stayed for dinner, hoping to talk to Catherine when she returned, but as the hours passed and she didn't come home, Dad's anxiety escalated. His breathing became labored, his chest tight. Mom was frantic, and I was preparing to call an ambulance when Catherine finally walked through the door. Dad's having chest pains, I'd said immediately. We need to get him to the hospital. Catherine had barely glanced at him before shaking her head. He's fine. He just gets worked up over nothing. Dad, you need to calm down and stop being so dramatic. Catherine, look at him. He can barely breathe. Sandra, you're overreacting. Dad has these episodes all the time now. The doctor said it's anxiety, not his heart. He just needs to relax. She turned away dismissively, heading toward the kitchen, as if our father wasn't struggling for air in the next room. I'd driven Dad to the emergency room myself while Mom rode in the passenger seat, both of us terrified. Catherine had stayed home, claiming someone needed to, quote, hold down the fort. The doctors confirmed it was a severe anxiety attack, likely triggered by financial stress, but it could have easily been something more serious. When we returned home hours later, Catherine was asleep on the couch, surrounded by shopping bags from an expensive boutique. She'd gone shopping while her father was in the emergency room. That night, lying in my bed back at the apartment, I'd finally accepted the truth I'd been avoiding for weeks. My sister hadn't just betrayed our parents financially. She'd abandoned them emotionally when they needed her most. The Catherine I'd grown up with, the one who'd promised to always take care of our family, was gone. In her place was someone I didn't recognize. Someone who saw our parents' vulnerability as an opportunity rather than a responsibility. The stack of documents I'd found in her room suddenly made perfect sense. Bank statements showing transfers to accounts in Catherine's name, legal papers establishing her as power of attorney, investment forms signed with shaky handwriting that looked nothing like Dad's usual signature. My sister had been systematically stealing from our parents while convincing them, and me, that she was their devoted caregiver. And when Dad's stress about the missing money had triggered a medical emergency, she'd refused to help, too busy spending their stolen funds to care about his well-being. The betrayal cut deeper than I'd ever imagined possible, but I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. The next morning, I called my cousin, Sandra Perez, the only family member who'd always seen through Catherine's manipulations. Xavier worked as a financial advisor and had questioned some of Catherine's decisions about our parents' care from the beginning. I need your help, I said without preamble when he answered. Catherine's been stealing from Mom and Dad. Xavier was quiet for a moment. I was wondering when you'd figure it out. I've been watching the signs for months, Sandra. The expensive clothes, the new car, the way she deflects whenever anyone asks about their finances. We met at a coffee shop near his office, and I spread out the documents I'd photographed from Catherine's room. Xavier's expression grew darker with each page he examined. This is worse than I thought, he said, pointing to a bank statement. Look at these withdrawal patterns. She's been taking money systematically, small amounts at first, then larger chunks. And this power of attorney document, Dad's signature looks forged. What do we do? We need to document everything before she realizes you know. Do your parents have any idea how much money is missing? I shook my head. Dad mentioned being confused about some bills, but Catherine always handles the explanations. She tells them the market is down or their medications cost more than expected. Xavier pulled out his phone. I'm calling my friend who works in elder abuse investigations. This isn't just family drama anymore, Sandra. This is financial exploitation of vulnerable adults. That afternoon, I returned to my parents' house with a plan. Catherine was out, probably spending more of their money, so I had time to gather additional evidence. Mom was napping, and Dad was in his study, looking through old photo albums with a confused expression. Dad, can I ask you something about your finances? He looked up, his eyes clearer than they'd been in days. I've been meaning to talk to someone about that. Catherine says everything's fine, but I can't make sense of the numbers anymore. We used to have enough for your mother's medications and my doctor visits, but now Catherine says we're barely scraping by. I sat beside him, my heart breaking at the trust in his voice. Dad, do you remember signing papers to make Catherine your power of attorney? His brow furrowed. Power of attorney? No, I don't think so. Why would I need that? I can still handle my own affairs. The confirmation hit me like a physical blow. Catherine had forged legal documents to gain control of their finances, then systematically drained their accounts while convincing them they were poor. When Catherine returned that evening, I was waiting in the living room with Xavier and our parents. She walked in carrying designer shopping bags, her face immediately shifting to suspicion when she saw the gathering. What's this about? She asked, setting down her purchases. We need to talk about Mom and Dad's finances, I said, keeping my voice steady. Catherine's laugh sounded forced. Sandra, we've been over this. I handle everything perfectly fine. Mom and Dad trust me completely. Then you won't mind explaining these, Xavier said, spreading the bank statements across the coffee table. The color drained from Catherine's face, but she recovered quickly. Those are private documents. You had no right to go through my things. Your things? Dad's voice was stronger than I'd heard it in weeks. Catherine, these are statements from my accounts. Why do you have them in your room? Dad, you gave me access to help manage your bills. You know, your memory isn't what it used to be. I never gave you power of attorney, Dad said firmly. And I certainly never authorized you to transfer money to your personal accounts. Catherine's composure finally cracked. You don't understand the pressure I've been under. I gave up my apartment, my relationship, my entire life to take care of you both. I deserve compensation for everything I've sacrificed. Compensation? Mom had woken up and joined us, her voice sharp with hurt. Catherine, we never asked you to sacrifice anything. We offered to help you get back on your feet, not to support you indefinitely. You're both getting old and confused, Catherine snapped, her mask finally slipping completely. Someone needs to make the hard decisions around here. I've been protecting you from yourselves. Xavier stood up, his voice calm but firm. Catherine, what you've done is called financial elder abuse. It's a felony. You forged legal documents, stole money from vulnerable adults, and manipulated them into believing they were poor while you spent their savings. You can't prove anything, Catherine said, but her voice wavered. Actually, we can, I said, pulling out my phone. I recorded our conversation yesterday when you admitted to taking their money, and Xavier's friend from the district attorney's office is very interested in reviewing the evidence. The room fell silent, except for the sound of Mom crying softly. Dad reached over and took her hand, both of them looking older and more fragile than I'd ever seen them. Catherine looked around the room, seeing no allies, no escape routes. Fine, she said finally, but don't expect me to stick around and be your scapegoat. I'll pack my things tonight. You'll pack your things under supervision, Xavier said, and you'll be returning every penny you stole, plus interest. We've already frozen the accounts you transferred money to. Catherine's face twisted with rage. You think you're so righteous, Sandra. You abandoned them for years while I was here every day. At least I stayed. You stayed to rob them, I replied. There's a difference between caregiving and exploitation. As Catherine stormed upstairs to pack, I sat with my parents, helping them process the betrayal. Dad kept shaking his head, muttering about how he'd trusted her completely. Mom alternated between anger and heartbreak, mourning the daughter she thought she knew. How did we miss this? Mom asked through her tears. Because you loved her, I said simply, and she used that love against you. Xavier spent the evening helping my parents understand their financial situation. The damage was significant, but not irreversible. They'd lost about 60% of their savings, but their house was safe, and their essential needs could still be met. "We'll get through this," I promised them. "And we'll make sure nothing like this ever happens again." Catherine left that night without saying goodbye, taking only her personal belongings under Xavier's watchful eye. She'd agreed to a repayment plan to avoid criminal charges, but the trust she'd shattered could never be rebuilt. As I helped my parents prepare for bed, Dad pulled me aside. "Sandra, I owe you an apology. I should have listened when you tried to warn me." "Dad, she fooled all of us. What matters now is moving forward." But even as I said the words, I knew the hardest part was yet to come. Catherine might be gone, but the damage she'd inflicted on our family would take much longer to heal.